Joel Embiid pushes a reporter in Philly. What's the fallout going to be? Is it time to panic in Milwaukee and Cleveland? Are they a contender? We'll find out next.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On NBA Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Gavin Schall. I'm the host of the Locked On Knicks podcast, if you can see the paraphernalia behind me. Filling in for Ryan Stiles tonight is Swipa, the host of the Locked On Nuggets podcast. You host Locked On NBA already twice a week. That wasn't enough for you. You're what JJ Redick calls a basketball sicko. Swipa, good to be with you. Eventful night in the NBA, but we start off in Philadelphia where Joel Embiid shoves a reporter, Philadelphia Inquirer columnist Marcus Haynes, after Hayes put out a story where he he referenced Joel Embiid's late brother, Arthur, in the process of questioning Embiid's professional and his ability to stay in shape. What do you think the fallout is? What was your reaction when you first heard this? It was kind of a jarring story on what was a great night of hoops.
So initially when the report came out, I read the article originally when it dropped. Now, they only allowed for you to read a certain bit of it behind a paywall a little bit. But then there were screenshots that started going around on Twitter or X where people were sharing about some of the comments that Marcus made. And my initial response to it was that it was an atrocious article in that it was somehow juxtaposing Joel Embiid's basketball commitment to honoring the legacy of his brother Arthur and the naming of his child after his brother, and to put them some way, somehow in the same context of one another in some honor system, I thought was one of the most ridiculous parallels and correlation I have ever seen about an athlete, let alone an NBA player. You can have your criticism for Joel Embiid and his inability to make it past the second round, to be healthy in playoff runs. Maybe he complains too much for you. Maybe he baits free throws too much. Those are all fair criticisms about the game. But when you start encroaching on a player's tragedy in real life scenarios and then using those moments as a way to somehow veer back to this silly game of basketball, that's when you have lost sight of what your job is, in my estimation, as a reporter or analyst of the sport. You and I are covering NBA hoops tonight. We're talking about the sport as a means of this is what happened, and then this is how these teams can improve, maintain, or what's just giving a prognosis for how basketball works. And in this instance, when Joel Embiid read this, he was rightfully incensed. Now, here's the other part of this. Joel Embiid, as Kyle Neubeck explained very eloquently in the conversation, Marcus showed up as a way of just kind of confronting the situation today at the postgame interview. And Embiid basically directly went at it and engaging with the reporter. But the reporter, apparently Marcus Haynes, offered an apology per Kyle Neubeck. And Kyle Neubeck then said that Joel Embiid did not accept that apology. And he basically said in other terms that if you ever mention my family again, then basically be prepared to live with the consequences, and then shoved him on the way as he tried to exit the venue. Security then got involved. Apparently security and the PR was asked the reporters not to comment or let anyone know what happened over the course. But, you know, that's just not the way things happen. And so this is all stuff you can look up. Sam Vecini, you can look up Kyle Neubeck. There are multiple sources. Keith Pompey with the Philadelphia Inquirer that you can go read about that have given details surrounding this event. So for me, Gavin, this was a horrible event. This is a very bad look for the NBA because this is just not what the game is supposed to be about. And I think twofold, I can absolutely understand Joel Embiid's anger and is hurt because he feels like he's given a lot to the city and given a lot to the media in that city. But also, Joel Embiid did cross a line, even if the reporter was wrong to do what he did. Joel Embiid put himself in a scenario because of the actions of another individual where he could be looking at a possible suspension and or fine because of this. Now, again, fully understand why, but it's the consequences. It's going to be the fallout that I'm very curious to see what happens next. How does the NBA, how does Adam Silver and Joe Dumars, how do they respond, and will they look to discipline Joel for putting his hands on a reporter or basically another staff member of the NBA? And then how then will the NBA deal with Marcus and the Philadelphia 76ers deal with Marcus going forward, given where that relationship has gone?
I think it's this thing that keeps on happening, and I don't totally understand how it happens, where reporters, fans, basically anyone involved with the game, at times forget these guys are human beings, right? You write that about any human being, they're going to have a visceral reaction to it, right? Like this is like the greatest tragedy of his life, something that everyone who has a sibling has nightmares about. And to your point, to compare it to invoke it in something as inconsequential as basketball, particularly about a guy where like this is one of the great players in the NBA. I mean, it's BS, and his reaction is human and it's understandable. And by the same token, these guys are paid tens of millions of dollars to deal with that crap, swallow it, and hopefully move on. I do not blame Joel Embiid. I would not be as restrained as he would be in his shoes. I think most people listening would not be as restrained as he was in his shoes. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of suspension is levied, particularly when it comes to, we don't really know the status of his health. There was talk earlier in the week he was going to make his debut today against the Memphis Grizzlies. That didn't happen. At what point is he deemed quote unquote healthy enough that he could have played anyways? Can the Sixers just say, all right, he's healthy now, start the suspension, when they really intended to sit him another 5 games? That is the relatively unimportant side of this.
Yeah.
I feel for Joel Embiid, and I cannot sit here on any kind of high horse and say I would act any differently. So I really don't have it in me to criticize Joel Embiid after this. I know he's supposed to be a role model. I know he's supposed to be better. I cannot say I would be above this, so I'm not going to come on here and say, well, Joel should have turned the other cheek.
Yeah, there's obviously a very fine line, but I think what I do want the audience to hear and Locked On Nuggets listeners to hear or Locked On, NBA, Locked On Anywhere, Locked On Knicks, everywhere across the NBA spectrum. I do want people to be able to put themselves in his shoes, and I want to empathize with Joel Embiid because losing a sibling is very difficult, and then to have the pressure of the world on you at all times, and even though you're an MVP, you've accomplished many great things in basketball, you're trying every day to get better, and you deal with a lot. But to be put in a situation to where you're having to reflect on the loss of life like that, and for it to be trivialized to the game of basketball, that's a lot to deal with. And so I do hope for Embiid's sake that he has like a lot of love and a lot of care around him as you're just continuing to try to navigate life without having someone that you care about. And think about this, Gavin, even now, instead of talking about the Philadelphia 76ers losing yet another game, we're having to focus on Embiid, and this is now invoking feelings and loss and sorrow that Embiid's been dealing with, I believe, since 2016 when he lost his brother. And so this is what I mean. Like, you just always have to realize your responsibility in this business on this side is to be a communicator to the fans on what's happening on the basketball side. And our job is to be good storytellers and to try to paint a broad and specific picture about the NBA and about what takes place on a day-to-day basis. And I think when you do things like that, you're distracting from your job, but also you're taking away from what makes the sport as great at what it is.
It is a frustrating story. I remember hearing about Embiid's brother passing when it happened, and it's one of those reminders. You look at these guys, you kind of project onto them that they have perfect lives, and the same tragedies that affect all of us affect them. And it is not any easier for them to handle it than it is for us to handle it, right? These guys are just people at the end of the day. We're going to talk some basketball when we come back. The Milwaukee Bucks fell 114 to 113 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Is it time to panic in Milwaukee? We'll get into that and more in just a sec here on Locked On NBA. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL and NBA action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That means if you were like me, you saw the Rockets down by 30 to the Warriors and said, hey, the Rockets are weird. Weird things happen when they play. I wonder if they're going to have a comeback. The line is -25. I think they're going to get this a little bit closer and maybe make some money that way. Again, if you're interested, you just visit FanDuel.com to join. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, time to talk some hoops. The Milwaukee Bucks fall 114 to 113 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Donovan Mitchell, game winner with 0.2 seconds left on the clock. It was not because of the stars. You cannot blame the stars this time. Damian Lillard, 41, 9, and 4 on 10 threes. Giannis, 34, 16, and 9 for anyone who watched the game. They were both transcendent. They played like the top 75 players in NBA history that they are. Everyone else on the Milwaukee Bucks, garbage. 35 points on a combined 15 of 48 shooting. You could argue this is encouraging if you're a glass half full kind of guy because they played maybe the best team in the NBA so far to a last second shot. You could argue this is extremely discouraging because Giannis and Dame did everything they were supposed to do and more, and they still lost. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, I think that if you're a Bucks fan, you should already be out just because the Doc Rivers tenure has been horrible. They've been good offensively. They have been mid to bad defensively, and I would just say outright bad this year. Giannis has been incredible for most of this year. Damian Lillard has had some incredible performances, and yet that duo does not look like we think it should look. The chemistry isn't there sometimes. They just do not look and perform as you would expect, and you can tell that by just their win profile. Even tonight, they were dominant, they were great, but they were getting housed defensively. They just don't have the personnel to be able to hold up over a 48-minute stretch versus high-level elite guard play specifically. Y'all, Donovan Mitchell, who didn't even shoot super well tonight, he has come into this year and absolutely let the world know that I am one of the best players in the league, and you give me a healthy stable of players, we can take down anybody. Darius Garland didn't shoot well, 5 of 13, still gives you a double-double with 10 assists. And Evan Mobley has taken an incredible leap this year. He's been a very good defender all year. Jared Allen, former All-Star, 15 and 12. They just have so many pieces they can throw at you, and their bench is competent. They know their role. Kenny Atkinson had some buying into a vision, and they have just offensively taken a leap that I honestly did not expect. And so the Bucks, to their credit, played them really well. But the same thing that ails the Bucks today is the same thing that ailed the Bucks yesterday, and the same thing that's going to ail the Bucks tomorrow. They can't guard a parked car. And until they can get stops when it matters, it's not going to be enough. Because as good as Taurean Prince has been at points in time, if he is your best POA defender and then you're having to deal with Gary Trent Jr. as your other option, you're going to struggle, Gavin. And so I think that this team is so top-heavy, and their talent at the top is transcendent. You're not going to find many better two players that are as good as they are that play together. But that culture, the scheme, it just doesn't work. And Doc Rivers, man, it's the same old with Doc. Magnify the stars, not a lot of off-ball movement, just kind of standing around watching them go. And you know what? Giannis is so good, Gavin. He can get down here on Jared Allen, and like he's just giving you the little dribble up top, gets you that little lean shoulder in, rolls the ball up, looks great, but it's just not translating to wins. And I don't know how much longer it's going to last, Gavin, but at this rate, 1-5, I never could have expected this start for them.
Yeah, it is shocking, and I think this night is particularly painful because sometimes you'll see Dame have a good game, sometimes you'll see Giannis have a good game, and it's like, all right, it was dueling banjos, right? There was no synergy there. That was not the case tonight. I mean, Dame came out on fire, had 21 points. I think it was 6 minutes left in the second quarter, 4 threes in the first 4 minutes. Giannis just over and over again bulldozing the Cavs in transition. He was going at Evan Mobley. He like might have broken Dean Wade. I don't know if Dean Wade is going to be walking right tomorrow. Like it was impressive, and their ability to get going in the pick and roll that so often last year, right? That was the call from everyone. If they can just run more 2-man action with those two, that will solve all their problems. Tonight, I have not watched a lot of Milwaukee this year. It looked really good to me, right? Like pick and roll right away, give and go. Got Dame a left wing 3. There was another one where Giannis drove right, no look behind the back pass out to Dame for 3. Even in terms of creating shots for others, where they run a pick and roll, Dame kicks it out, Dame hits Giannis on the slip. Giannis kicks it out to Andre Jackson Jr. Andre Jackson Jr. then hits Dame on the wing. Like they were getting a lot of great offense from those two playing together. But to your point, there's just nothing else there. And I was listening to Locked On Bucks this week because I wanted to get prepared for tonight's show. I was like, all right, what's the vibe there? And they are set on the idea that, like, hey, Chris Middleton is maybe not going to solve all this, but he's going to solve a lot of this. I think it will help because they have guys on the floor, like I saw with Andre Jackson Jr. tonight, who they inserted because they need the athleticism, they need the defense, they need another guy who's an effective passer. He was scared to shoot 3 feet away from the basket. He came back in the fourth quarter, hit a big 3. That was great. They just don't have enough guys who are going to come out and make, like Trent sucked tonight. He's been up and down. Prince made 3s. Like that is not the hill you want to die on if you're a title contender. I just don't really see a world with not a lot of draft equity, like zero financial flexibility, where this ends in a good way. You got a little ahead of me, but the Cavs, I really am buying into this team. I'm really buying into this group. I got to be honest. I have a little bit of an anti-Cavs bias. I watched the Knicks dismantle them 2 years ago, and I just had it etched in my brain. This team is soft. Jared Allen came out and said the lights were too bright in MSG. Mitchell Robinson's a big bully. I don't like him. And then they kicked the Knicks' butt this year. They on a back-to-back where they didn't have their best stuff. They beat the Bucks. The shot making from Darius Garland is ridiculous. You mentioned Donovan Mitchell. Evan Mobley's handle in tight spaces is amazing. Do you actually buy them as a legit championship contender where they, outside of Donovan Mitchell being great, they haven't really shown anything in the playoffs these 2 years?
Yeah, I think the Cavs are contenders, but every time you ask that question or anyone ask me, it's always going to be in the context of, well, how well will they be able to play versus the Boston Celtics? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Yes, there's a path for them to beat Boston. There is a path for them to push Boston. But at the end of the day, I'm not taking them to beat Boston. And their top-end talent, I think they have good top-end talent. But when you play versus that team, you got to have dudes that can put it on the floor, or they're like all-time level great in that series as shot makers or on the interior or something. Like, you got to have something that's really putting you ahead. Because Boston, they're going to put 5 players on the court that can dribble, create, pass, shoot, dunk. Like, that's a lot to deal with, and they're all athletic as crap. So I think that the Cleveland has a lot of that. I think Mitchell fits that bill. Evan Mobley fits that bill. Funny enough, Karis LeVert playing balling this year, he fits that bill. So I think they have players that can do that, but it still will be a tough ask. But I do think they can easily end up in the Eastern Conference Finals should they maintain this kind of play.
Yeah, I think, look, the Knicks are going to get a lot better. We haven't even seen the Sixers yet. We doubt the Bucks, but Giannis in any single series, you never know. So there's a lot of obstacles there. I think a Celtics series would come down to, can you still maximize Evan Mobley when Boston will inevitably test him in space over and over again? He will hold up. Can he be at his best? Very similar. Obviously, he's more versatile, but similar questions to what you asked with Rudy Gobert every year. And I'm looking at Darius Garland because he kind of fell apart a little bit in that series a year ago. He looked stronger. The shot making, I mean, he had a 19-point fourth quarter against the Knicks earlier in the week where he was just transcendent. He's been really, really impressive. Was coming off a jaw injury last year. If he can be at his best, if Jared Allen can find a way to to get out on Kristaps Porzingis and contain. That could be an interesting series. Still a long way away, but Cleveland has been fantastic. We'll get into Rockets Warriors, a little bit on the Wolves, and then some quick hitters across the NBA world next on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at GameTime. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I use GameTime Picks because as people who listen to Locked On Knicks know, I'm a New Yorker who just relocated to Arizona. So what is the first thing I do when I get here? I look up Knicks tickets because they are much cheaper than they are back home. And on GameTime, I was able to find straight on, up top seats for $39, which is a deal I could not find on any other site. And the beauty of GameTime is even if you do find a better deal with the GameTime lowest price guarantee, if you find a lower price ticket on a different site, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime Picks. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, a little lightning round here to wrap things up on Locked On NBA Game Night. We got a thriller of a game that we might not have time to totally do justice to. The Golden State Warriors were up 31 points on the Houston Rockets early or late in the second quarter. By halfway through the fourth, the Rockets somehow had the lead. Golden State held on to win in overtime. The Warriors now, 7 games into the season, have the second best net rating in basketball. They have the second best defense in all of basketball. They put on a clinic in the first half of this one against the Rockets, down Steph Curry, down DeAnthony Melton. Do you buy the Golden State Warriors as a top 5 defense in the NBA?
All season, maybe. Yeah, they definitely could do it. But in terms of playoff setting, probably not. But this really just defense in the regular season is so much about effort and scheme execution. But when you're playing versus more high level team, remember they started off the season versus the Spurs, who were bad, and then Portland Trailblazers, who were bad, and then today versus the Rockets, they looked great until they didn't. So, yeah, they have the potential with Draymond. I think with Draymond, you can always field a great defense. But, they're going to start to get into the meat of their schedule and play against some of these top-tier teams, and then we'll have to see how they respond. But there's definitely a possibility for them to do so, but they are small also in some ways that, I think you need to be bigger, especially as you kind of try to creep up the board of talent around the NBA. But, versus specific matchups, they can be overwhelming.
Yeah, new defensive coordinator and Jerry Stackhouse. He's been great. They continue to thrive, bring in new coaches, bring in new minds. You see Podziemski just taking charges all over the place. Draymond Green still a lead, still directing everything, can still single-handedly break up a fast break. I'm with you in that. I need to see more against better teams, but they have taken care of business. The vibes, to quote Jalen Brunson, are immaculate there. The way they are using Buddy Hield, almost at least offensively, regaining a prime Klay Thompson. There was, I think, a 5-play sequence where Hield created 3 straight baskets off the ball just from getting doubled and them leveraging it in different ways, getting it out to Kuminga, getting Draymond to lay up because Hield was running off a screen and 2 different defenders went with him, setting a screen off ball with Amen Thompson falling asleep and then hitting a 3. He was ridiculous in the first quarter. They were calling opening plays for Moses Moody. They're doing a lot of it's working. But on the other side of this game, the Houston Rockets, again, it's you could be glass half full, glass half empty. This was an amazing comeback. They were coming off a great win over Dallas earlier this week. But this is an identity issue to me right now with the Rockets. They have the team with Şengün. He's arguably their best player. They have a nice run in the third quarter to get back into this game with Şengün on the court, with him facilitating offensive rebounding, getting putbacks, and then they go to the small lineup, and you see the athleticism of their slashers. Tari Eason had something like 4 steals in a 7-minute stretch, all for layups or dunks. Amen Thompson getting to the rim over and over again down the stretch of this game, and you kind of get to a point, which team are they? Do they want Şengün as Jokic light? Do they want to play through their athletic wings? Do they have to make a trade to figure it out?
I honestly have no idea what they're going to do. I think that Şengün, for many Rockets fans, he is kind of their ace in the hole. You know, he is their future all-star, and yet he doesn't seem to fully fit Ime Udoka's scheme. So it's just, I think Ime has in mind what he wants. You know, Ime, that famous year he had with the Boston Celtics on the title, I mean, he was using Robert Williams and Al Horford. You know, that was his big prototype. You know, they had a very specific kind of thing they wanted. And Şengün, obviously, it's just not that. But he's very talented. He played 21 minutes, had 14, 10, and 4, but still, like, it just wasn't enough. And so I think he should have played more. But to your point, Tari Eason, Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd, and then that's not including Cam Whitmore, who they have on their roster, who's not getting a lot of playing time. And then now starters with Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. I mean, I don't think it's a consolidation yet, but they definitely are trying to figure out which players we want to prioritize and how we want to utilize our lineup versatility. And I think Amen Thompson has the potential to be the best of all of them. And I think Reed Shepherd is also going to be a future pillar for that roster. But, like, well, what do you do with Fred VanVleet? What do you do with Dylan Brooks? Like, you still need them to play because you need that veteran presence on the roster, but you're also trying to develop young talent. Now, they're in a very enviable situation for a lot of teams because you got a surplus of really good and some great youthful talent, but then you also are trying to find ways to help them to cultivate a winning culture similar to what OKC is doing right now. So I don't think they should blow it up yet. I think they really just need to continue to stick with their process and allow these young players to figure it out as they go.
Yeah, I agree. We've seen so many teams throughout NBA history make these trades too early, right? And live to regret it when someone breaks out another area. It's like, trust the Sam Presti way. Let it play out. No urgency to – I mean, I know they want to make the playoffs this year. If they don't, it's not the end of the world. But I am going to follow the Amen Thompson storyline because the same thing happened last year. Şengün got hurt. He exploded. Şengün plays. He has somewhat of a limited role. He's at his best as kind of a rim-running, like really undersized 4 or 5, playing off of Jabari Smith Jr. and his shooting. It's going to be interesting in Houston. I'll just leave this one open-ended. The Denver Nuggets get a feel-good win over Utah one night after a heartbreaker against the Timberwolves. You are the host of Locked On Nuggets. Everyone go check them out on Locked On Nuggets. How'd you feel about the game tonight? How you feeling about the Nuggets in general?
Yeah, I mean, they took care of business. I think this is a get-right game for the bench unit. They've tried multiple variations of it now. Which starter is going to stagger? Jamal Murray's out in the concussion protocol, so Russell Westbrook gets to start. Russ has been the most inefficient player in the NBA so far this year, but he's had tremendous defensive plays, and even today versus the Jazz. Michael Porter Jr., second straight 20-point game. He's getting his jump shot back. He looks like he's going to be a certified sniper for this team this year. Aaron Gordon has been exceptional, and the NBA should be afraid because Nikola Jokic is hitting all of his jumpers. I think that's where a lot of this stuff is going to work out for them. So right now, they're trying to integrate new players and a new scheme, and a new starter in Christian Brown, who has been exceptional. So I think once they actually figure out their bench, they're actually going to turn back into what people thought they were, which is like bona fide championship favorites. But the problem is that Dario Saric has been so unplayable that 5 games into the year, he gets benched for DeAndre Jordan. So they have to certify their backup 5 position. They got to figure out their backup point guard situation. Is that going to be Russ for the rest of the year? And if so, Russ has to be able to convert. And so the game today was mostly Julian Strawther getting real run, 19 points for him. He's a bucket getter, and they're going to need him as the year goes on. He got even more playing time at the combo guard today in the point guard position. So they have things they're trying to figure out. But I think once you get to game 20 in this season, I think that's when they're going to start to hit their stride.
Nikola Jokic, unquestionably on track for maybe yet another MVP. First player in league history to put up 150 points, 50 rebounds, 50 assists through his first 5 games, and he was somehow even better than that tonight. I still want to see peak Jamal Murray. I'm not a Nuggets fan. I am a big Jamal Murray fan. I want to see the best version of him. But hey, let's bounce around the NBA. Our Locked On NBA hosts, we're all over the place tonight, and we get started in Memphis, where Joe Mullinax, the co-host of Locked On Grizzlies, was there for a big win over the Sixers. Let's see what he had to say.
Sometimes you run into a team that has it worse off than you when it comes to the injury bug, and that's exactly what happened for the Memphis Grizzlies. A little bit of better luck for them on that front in a victory over the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and no Joel Embiid, no Paul George, the two best players for Philadelphia, Tyrese Maxey, maybe might have something to say about that. Point being, as bad off as Memphis is in terms of the injury bug, Philly at the top might be worse off. And the two best players for the Grizzlies, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., had strong showings. Another really good performance off the bench from Jay Huff, and perhaps the best Zach Edey game of the season, which was a really positive sign. Jalen Wells continues to do some good things. The Grizzlies have had an uneven start to their campaign. There's no denying that. But considering how crazy things have been for their rotation and this new look offense, any win is a good win this time of year.
I'm really high on Memphis. They get a make-right win that they desperately needed. Now let's check in with Rylan Stiles over in Oklahoma City as they continue to be, by far, I'm talking by about 7 points per 100 possessions, the best defense in basketball.
It wasn't a perfect game, but the Thunder remained perfect thanks to their third quarter defense, which launched them to another lopsided win. SGA was special in this game, erasing an early deficit all by himself. Leading into the half, the Thunder were down 4. They were a +7 in the third quarter and eventually ran away in the final frame. They did it on the back of their role players, still struggling offensively, but you would expect that J-Dub and Chet Holmgren will heat up pretty soon. So find out more about this game on Locked On Thunder.
All right, Sean Woodley over with Locked On Raptors. Swipa, this is one that's near and dear to my heart. RJ Barrett, forever a fan, and he has been cooking. They beat the Kings in a dramatic overtime victory. Let's go to Canada. What did Sean Woodley have to say?
What's up? Sean here. Locked On Raptors outside Scotiabank Arena after the Toronto Raptors took down the Sacramento Kings in overtime, 131-128. The fighting Toronto Raptors, who do not have Scotty Barnes, they do not have Emmanuel Quickley. Jakob Poeltl fouled out of this game as well, as did Jonathan Mobo. They were down to Chris Boucher at center, and RJ Barrett and Grady Dick absolutely killing it for the Raptors in an overextended role, surely, as the two lead offensive creators for this team without Barnes and Quickley. They've been incredible the last two nights. Both were over 30 points last night against the Lakers. Dick with 22 tonight. RJ Barrett with 31. And the fitting, beautiful poetry of RJ Barrett and DeMar DeRozan going toe-to-toe at Scotiabank Arena, the house that Vince Carter built on the night he gets his jersey retired. Pretty awesome stuff. The Raptors are 2-5, but they might be the most fun 2-5 that's ever existed. I'll have more on Locked On Raptors coming up on Monday. Be sure to tune in.
Swiper, you're getting fired up for that one. You also a big RJ fan?
No, man, I'm just glad Vince Carter got his jersey retired like that, man. And shout out, DeMar DeRozan going back too, man. Toronto got a really, really, really rich basketball history.
Passing of the torch, I hope to RJ. 31, 9, and 6, I think, tonight. He was crazy. All right, this one was recorded literally across the street from me. I could hear Brendan screaming it. The Suns are 5-1. They escaped the Trailblazers. Here's how it went down.
Win still counts as a win. Brendan Clean here from Locked On Suns as the Phoenix Suns win 103-97 at home on Saturday night against the Portland Trailblazers. Wasn't even just a tale of two halves, but a tale of 4 separate quarters. The Suns generate good shots in that first half, explode in the third quarter, and then basically collapse in the fourth quarter. They score 44 in the third. They get one shy of their franchise high in 3-point attempts total, and yet only muster up 103 points. On the contrary, 2 positives. Grayson Allen finally looking to get into a rhythm after missing some games for personal issues, missing most of preseason, having an Achilles soreness issue. He comes alive, looks every bit like himself again, 18 points, nailing every 3 really that he got that was open. And Bradley Beal returning from right elbow soreness, right elbow sprain at one point. He looked like he was in a much better groove, was very in his head in that first half, but figured it out down the stretch as he made threes, drove to the basket, handled tough defense, the type of night the Suns are going to need from Bradley Beal. Again, getting the job done, tale of 4 different quarters, but the Suns will take it as they move to 5-1.
The Suns are 5-1. The Boston Celtics are 6-1. Excuse me if you hear some booing in the background on this one. John Corrales from Boston has more.
Boston Celtics get the 113-103 win in Charlotte. Second night of a back-to-back in Charlotte. No residual drama from the Grant Williams stuff. That never really materialized. There were no texts, no extra activities or anything like that. They just played a basketball game, and the Celtics basically won it in the first half, where they went up by 21 at one point. The first half was Jason Tatum's, 17 points for him. Peyton Pritchard's, 17 points for him. Pritchard was just a monster from deep. And in the third quarter, they kind of came out sloppy. Charlotte goes on a 17-2 run, then a huge shot from Drew Holiday, two-man game with Al Horford, and he hits a three-pointer. That gets the Celtics to settle down. They close the third quarter 15-7. They take an 11-point lead. They kind of cruise along that way and finish this with the 10-point win. Clutch shots don't have to come at the end of games, and that's proof right there. Drew Holiday with a clutch three-pointer in the third quarter that turned this game around, really, and helped the Celtics close this out. The Celtics now move to 6-1 on the season, 4-1 on the road. So a lot of road games to start this off. They've got one more Monday night in Atlanta, and then they get to come home and play a couple of games at home. So Celtics 6-1 and looking good.
The Celtics, I can't even say it with a straight face. Congrats, Boston. 6-1 on the year. Went through Charlotte's defense like Swiss cheese. LaMelo Ball really good on the offensive end, putting up 35-5 in the early season. We only have one game left. The Miami Heat, a big win. My only takeaway from this one is that Bam Adebayo, who was averaging 11 points on the year, a lot of questions about his offense. He had not scored more than 12 in a game over the Heat's first four games. He puts up 32 in this one. Any takeaways from that as someone who beat, I'll give you credit, who beat the Heat in the finals once upon a time?
Oh, no. I mean, they did this in Mexico, I believe, too. So maybe he just needs to take a little international trip to get out of Miami for a bit and get his mojo back. But, yeah, I'm not really surprised. I think Bam is going to have an incredible year, but it's the early NBA season. It takes a while to get into your groove a little bit, especially from a shot-making standpoint, from a center that can struggle with that here and there.
I am going to, next time I have a down podcast, I am taking an international trip. He is Swipa. You can find him on social media. You can subscribe to Locked On Nuggets, one of the great podcast hosts in the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Gavin Schall, and we will talk to you soon, very soon, every single night on Locked On NBA Game Night.